Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And may the peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah be upon you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. It's wonderful to be back with you for this one.
It's great to be back. So I want to start today by putting you and really everyone listening on the spot. Let's try a little thought experiment.
Okay, alrighty.
Imagine there's a test, a spiritual diagnostic test. And this test, it claims it can measure the state of your faith with like 100% accuracy, no margin for error.
That's a pretty bold claim. I mean, usually matters of faith are considered invisible, right? They're in the heart.
Exactly. And usually when we try to gauge how religious someone is, we look at the big, obvious things.
The metrics.
The metrics. We ask, how many times did they go to the mosque? How much of the Quran have they memorized? We look for all those external markers of piety.
Right. The ritual performance, the things you can see.
But here's the twist with this test. It doesn't care about any of that. It doesn't ask about your meditation schedule. It doesn't check your attendance for Friday prayers. It doesn't even ask if you fast during Ramadan.
Okay, you have my full attention. If it's not checking the rituals, what on earth is it checking?
It measures your faith by checking your immediate visceral reaction when your neighbor knocks on your door on a Tuesday evening and asks to borrow a plastic bucket.
A bucket.
A bucket. Or maybe a cooking pot. Or a drill.
A bucket. That sounds so anticlimactic. It sounds incredibly mundane, almost trivial. You're telling me my entire spiritual standing hinges on kitchenware.
It sounds trivial, doesn't it? But that is precisely why we are here today. We're looking at a source text titled The Metaphysics of Neighborly Needs.
Yeah, I love that title.
Me too. And I have to admit, when I first saw it, I thought it was a bit of an exaggeration. But as I went through the material, this incredibly comprehensive exegesis and social analysis of Surah Al-Ma'un, I realized it's not an exaggeration at all.
It really isn't. We are diving deep into Surah Al-Ma'un, which is the 107th chapter of the Quran.
And it's tiny. I mean, it is just 7 verses. If you recite it at a normal pace, it's maybe 20, 30 seconds, tops.
You could recite it while waiting for a red light to turn green. And that's the beauty of the shorter surahs. They're like these compressed diamonds. They're small, but they are incredibly dense. The source material we have today suggests that these 7 short lines carry a theological weight that could, crush mountains.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to understand how this text manages to connect two things that, in my mind at least, feel light years apart.
Okay.
On one side, you have the cosmic, almost terrifying reality of Judgment Day, what the Quran calls adin, the moment where everything ends and all accounts are settled.
The ultimate reckoning.
And on the other side,
Yeah.
you have a guy asking to borrow a hammer.
It's the bridge between the heavens and the hardware store.
The heavens in the hardware store. That's perfect. I love that.
That's what it is. And, the roadmap for our discussion today really follows that structure. We're going to traverse the whole surah, look at the history, the psychology it describes. But our destination, the place we're really going to park the car and get out and look around, is verse 7.
The final verse.
That final verse is the litmus test you mentioned. It's where all that heavy theology hits the pavement.
Before we get to the pavement, though, we have to deal with the map. I was looking through the notes on the context of this surah, and it seems like this chapter has a bit of an identity crisis, or maybe multiple identity situation is a nicer way to put it.
You're talking about the different names for it.
Yeah, the names. I've always known it as Surah Al-Ma'un, but the research lists a few others. Surah Ad-Din, Surah Al-Yatim. Does it matter what we call it, or is this just, scholarly trivia?
No, it absolutely matters. In the Quranic sciences, the name of a chapter is often a key. It's a code, really, that unlocks its central theme. It's not just a label. It's an entire argument in a word or two.
Okay, so let's crack the code. Let's start with Surah Ad-Din, the chapter of the religion. Why that?
Well, that one's fascinating because usually when we say religion or din, we think of the whole package: theology, law, ritual, all of it. This surah gets that name because it radically redefines what religion actually looks like in practice. It's essentially saying, you think religion is all this grand stuff. No, let me show you. Religion is this.
So it's a definition, a corrective one.
It's a corrective definition, exactly. Then you have Surah Al-Yatim, the chapter of the orphan. That title shifts the focus entirely. It tells you right from the start that you can't talk about God without talking about the people society has forgotten or pushed aside.
The most vulnerable.
The most vulnerable. But the most common name, and the one we're using, is Surah Al-Ma'un.
The chapter of small kindnesses.
And that title is just brilliant because it's taken from the very last word of the very last verse.
I didn't even realize that.
Think about the structure of that. You read the whole thing, you go through the heavy theology, the warnings, the descriptions of hypocrisy, and the very last word you're left with, ringing in your ears, is mon. It forces you to realize that the entire argument of the chapter culminates in this one simple concept.
It's like the punchline of a very serious joke.
Exactly. Everything leads to mon.
Now, speaking of leading to things, I got a little bit lost reading the history section. The notes mention this chronological debate, and honestly, sometimes when I see scholarly debate in these texts, my eyes kind of glaze over.
I get that.
I just want to know what it means. But this particular debate seems pretty fundamental.
No, it is. It's absolutely fundamental. It's like a detective story.
Okay, set the scene for me. What's the mystery here?
The mystery is, where was this revealed? Was it in Mecca or was it in Medina?
And for anyone listening who might not be a historian, just remind us why that geography matters so much.
It matters because the where tells you the who and the why. Mecca represents the early days. The Muslims were a persecuted minority. Their opponents were the pagan elites, these wealthy, powerful, tribal leaders who completely rejected the idea of one God and the afterlife.
So Meccan revelation is usually about core beliefs, fighting oppression, what they call the fire and brimstone stuff.
Precisely. Then you have Medina. This is years later. The Muslims have migrated. They've established a state. They have political power. And the main problem in Medina wasn't pagans torturing them anymore. It was an internal problem.
Hypocrisy.
It was hypocrisy. People pretending to be Muslims to get social clout or to protect their business interests. Internal rot.
Okay, so I've got it. Mecca equals pagans and oppression. Medina equals hypocrites and internal rot.
You got it. So now look at the Surah. You have some of the heaviest scholars, like Ibn Abbas, saying it's definitely Meccan. But then you have other very credible scholars saying, no, it's Medinan.
Why the confusion? I mean, can't they just check the timestamp?
If only. The confusion exists because the surah seems to be speaking to both of those groups at the same time.
How so?
Well, look at the first half. Verses 1 through 3. It talks about someone who denies the afterlife and pushes away orphans with violence.
That sounds like a Meccan pagan warlord for sure. That's the bad guy from the early movie.
Absolutely. But then look at verses 4 through 7. It talks about people who pray, but they pray lazily. They show off their prayers. That doesn't sound like a pagan.
No, pagans don't perform Muslim prayers.
So that character sounds like a hypocrite, someone inside the community in Medina.
I see. So you have a text that seems to start in one city and then halfway through it ends up in another.
Exactly. And this leads to what the source calls the synthesis view, which is just fascinating. This is the view that the surah is actually a compilation. The first half was revealed in Mecca, the second half was revealed years later in Medina, and they were divinely stitched together to form one complete, coherent picture.
That is incredible. So the very structure of the surah itself is a bridge.
It is the ultimate bridge. It perfectly links the theological foundation. You have to fix your worldview, which was the message in Mecca with social responsibility, how you actually behave in a community, which was the big challenge in Medina.
That changes how I read it completely. It's not just a random list of bad things. It's a journey. You start with the internal belief, and you have to see it through to the external action.
And the warning is crystal clear. You cannot have one without the other. If you break that bridge, the entire structure of your faith collapses. You can't just have Meccan belief without Medinan practice.
Okay, let's step onto that bridge. Let's look at the text itself. Section 2 of our outline is titled The Diagnosis. And the surah opens with a question that feels, I don't know, like an interrogation. Verse 1. Have you seen the one who denies the recompense?
The Arabic here is aridita, and it's inviting the prophet, and by extension all of us, to look. Have you seen? It's a visual word. It's asking us to observe the characteristics of a very specific type of person.
It's not asking, do you know the philosophy of the one who denies? It's asking, have you seen him in action?
Right. It's concrete. Now, usually when we think of someone denying the recompense or the afterlife ad-din, we think of an atheist, someone who intellectually argues, there is no God, there is no judgment day. When we die, we're just worm food.
Yeah, philosophical disagreement, a debate you'd have in a university common room.
But the source material highlights something so critical here. The person being described in this surah might not be an intellectual atheist at all. This is about what's called functional denial.
Functional denial. I love that term. Let's unpack that. What does that look like in the wild?
It means a person might actually claim to be religious. They might wear the clothes, say the right phrases, inshallah and mashallah. They identify with the tribe. But if their behavior is predatory, if they crush the vulnerable, they are functionally denying the judgment.
Because if they really believed, rights.
Exactly. If you really believed with every single fiber of your being that you were going to stand naked and accountable before God and answer for every tear you caused an orphan to shed, you wouldn't. You simply couldn't act that way.
So the fact that you do act that way is the proof.
It's the proof. It proves that deep down in the part of you that makes decisions, you don't really think the bill is ever coming due.
That is a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
It means your ethics are the ultimate proof of your worldview.
Yes. If this world is the only reality, then sure, it makes sense. Grab everything you can, survival of the fittest. The orphan is just a burden on your resources. But if you believe in Adin, you have to operate on a completely different software.
And the surah gives us the first symptom of this functional denial in verse 2. It says, "For that is the one who repulses the orphan."
And the word used here, yadu, we really need to spend a moment on this word. It's not a passive word. It's not ignores the orphan.
The notes say it implies violence.
It does. Yadu'u means to push away harshly, to shove. The image it evokes is like a bouncer at a club physically throwing someone out onto the curb. That is yadu'u.
Wow, that's a visceral image.
And we have to put ourselves in the context of pre-Islamic Mecca, the Jahiliyyah period. In that society, your worth is tied to your tribe's ability to defend you. An orphan had no father to defend him, no sword to back him up.
So they were socially invisible.
They were worse than invisible. They were targets. If an orphan's father died and left an inheritance, the guardians, usually powerful uncles or tribal elders, would often just consume it. They would absorb the wealth into their own. And if the orphan as a child came asking for his rights, they wouldn't just say no. They would physically shove him away. Get out of here. You have no power.
It paints a picture of someone who sees vulnerability not as a call to help, but as a nuisance. Or worse, an opportunity for exploitation.
Exactly that.
But here's where I want to push back a little, or at least ask the tough question. We don't live in tribal Mecca. Most people listening to this aren't literally shoving orphans into the street. So how does a word like yadu'u apply to us in 2026?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the source suggests we have to look at what it calls systemic neglect. We might not be physically shoving orphans, but do we participate in systems that push them to the margins of society?
Give me an example of that.
Okay, think about the foster care system in many countries. It's often underfunded, overlooked, and tragically riddled with abuse. When we vote for policies that slash social safety nets for vulnerable children because we want slightly lower taxes, are we engaging in a modern bureaucratic form of yadu?
Oof, that hits hard. It's repulsion by policy.
It is. Or think about social stigma. Do we isolate troubled kids who act out because of deep trauma? Do we push them out of our schools, out of our children's friend groups? That is pushing away the orphan. The Quran doesn't just ask us to tolerate them, it demands that we honor them.
So the first symptom is this act of cruelty. But then verse 3 takes it a step further, and I think this one is even trickier for the average person. It says this person does not encourage the feeding of the poor.
This is such a subtle but absolutely devastating critique. Notice the verse doesn't say he does not feed the poor. It says he does not encourage, the Arabic is yahuru, the feeding of the poor.
Okay, what's the difference?
The difference is one of capability. Look, maybe you are poor yourself. Maybe you literally have no food to give. You aren't blameworthy for that, but you can always advocate. You can always use your voice to encourage others.
So the failure here isn't a failure of your wallet. It's a failure of your voice.
It's a failure of concern. It's a failure of the heart. If you aren't feeding the poor and you aren't even telling others to feed the poor, it means the hunger of the poor doesn't even register on your moral radar. You are completely indifferent.
And there's a linguistic nuance here that honestly just blew my mind when I read it in the source notes. It's about the preposition used. The verse says, taril miskin.
Yes. This is one of those tiny grammar points that, once you understand it, it can change your entire economic worldview.
So break it down for us.
Literally, the phrase translates to the food of the poor. It does not say feeding to the poor.
Okay, play that out for me. Food of the poor versus feeding to the poor. Why does that matter so much?
Well, if I say I am feeding to the poor, it implies that the food is mine. It's my sandwich. It's my money. And I am being a benevolent, generous benefactor by deigning to give some of it to this hungry person. I am the hero of the story.
Right. It's my charity. I'm giving away my property.
But if the Quran says it is the food of the poor, it means the food actually belongs to them by divine right. It is their property. I am just holding it for them.
Wait, so if I have wealth
Yeah.
and there is a hungry person nearby, That wealth, that portion of it isn't actually mine.
In the cosmic sense, no. You are a trustee. You are a bank teller. When you go to a bank, the teller hands you cash. Is the teller being generous? Of course not. They are just giving you what is already yours. If the teller decided to keep it, they would be a thief.
Wow, that flips the script completely. The wealthy aren't donors. They are potentially embezzlers if they withhold that right.
Precisely. Withholding it isn't just being stingy. It's a form of injustice. It's keeping what rightfully belongs to the most vulnerable. This moves us from the realm of individual charity to the realm of rights and social justice.
Okay, so we have the full diagnosis of the denier. They push away the orphan, that's active cruelty, and they don't advocate for the poor. That's passive indifference. But now, the surah pivots. We cross the bridge. We move from the pagan streets of Mecca to, essentially, the prayer mats of Medina. And verse 4 drops an absolute bombshell.
Fawwailun lil musallin.
So do those who pray.
Just imagine hearing that for the first time. Imagine you're a Muslim in Medina, you pray 5 times a day, you're trying your best, and then revelation comes down from heaven and says, woe to those who pray.
I'd be looking for the exit, and it sounds like a complete contradiction. Why would God curse the very people doing the very thing he commanded them to do?
It's a shock tactic. It's meant to grab you by the collar and shake you. The word wail, woe, is a heavy, heavy word. It implies destruction, calamity. Some traditions even say it's the name of a specific, horrific valley in hell. And it's directed at the musallin, the prayer doers.
But obviously, it can't be targeting everyone who prays, so verse 5 clarifies it immediately. Who are heedless of their prayer.
And here is where the Arabic grammar saves us again. We need to be so precise here. The text uses the preposition fi and which means heedless of their prayer, and salatihim. It does not use the preposition fi-en, which would mean heedless in their prayer. Fi salatihim.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I'll be totally honest with you, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate. I get distracted in my prayer all the time. I'm standing there, and suddenly I'm thinking about my grocery list or that email I forgot to send or whether I left the stove on. If the verse meant heedless in prayer, I'd be doomed. We'd all be doomed.
You and me both. And not just us. Even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had moments of human forgetfulness in prayer. That is natural. The human mind wanders. Allah doesn't curse us for having a wandering mind or for struggling to focus. That's a weakness, not a sin.
Phew. Okay. That is a huge relief to hear. So what is being heedless of prayer?
Being heedless of prayer and salatihim, this is about intentional neglect. It's not that you tried to focus and failed. It's that you didn't even try at all.
Give me an example of that.
It's delaying the prayer until the very last possible the 11th hour. Not because you were busy, but because you just don't care. You view it as a nuisance. It's missing the entire essence of it. It's treating the prayer like a burden to be discarded rather than a meeting with the King of Kings.
But it just becomes a checklist item. Did I do the motions? Did I say the words? Okay, I'm good. Now back to the real world.
Exactly. It's what the source calls superficial religiosity. The body is present, but the heart is absent, and the heart is absent on purpose.
And this connects directly to verse 6, which describes the motivation of these people, those who make show of their deeds.
The concept of Riyah, showing off.
This feels very, very specific to the hypocrites in Medina.
It was. In Medina, Islam was the dominant social force. If you wanted to be a respected person in society, you had to be seen as a Muslim. So the hypocrites would come to the mosque, but only when people were watching. They'd stand in the front rows. But if they were alone at home, they wouldn't bother praying. They were using religion as a form of social currency.
But let's bring this to the modern day. We don't have hypocrites in that same political sense, but we definitely have Riyah.
Oh, we have Riyah on steroids. We have an entire algorithm designed for Riyah.
You mean social media?
Absolutely. The lens of the camera is the new public square. Think about it. If you do a good deed, you feed a homeless person, you donate to a charity, but you feel this burning, irresistible need to take a selfie and post it on Instagram, why are you doing that?
For the likes, for the validation from others.
Exactly, and that is the absolute danger. Riyah completely hollows out the deed. The tradition says that if you are doing it for the applause of the audience, then that applause is your reward. You've already been paid in full. You can't then expect a reward from God, too.
It's the narcissism of public piety. It's all about, look at how holy I am.
And it's so subtle. It's not always a big selfie. Sometimes it's just the way we talk, dropping these humble brags about our worship. Oh, I was so tired for work today because I was up all night praying to Hajjud.
I'm just so exhausted from all my virtue.
Right, and the Surah is screaming at us. If your worship is a performance for other people, it is worthless.
So let's just recap where we are. We've seen the denier, who is cruel to orphans. We've seen the hypocrite, who performs fake prayers and shows off. And now we finally arrive at the destination, the climax of the Surah. Verse 7 gives us the final symptom that seals their fate.
And withhold small assistance.
Wayamno Al-Ma'un.
This is it, the word that the entire surah is named after, Ma'un.
We have to stop here and really look at this word. It's such a strange little word.
It is. The etymology, according to scholars like Ibn Manzur, implies anything useful, any assistance that is given easily. But historically, it evolved. In the pre-Islamic Jahiliyyah period, it sometimes meant obedience or submission. But in the Quranic context, it becomes very, very tangible. It refers to the tangible bonds of community cooperation.
Now, looking at the interpretations in the source material, there seems to be this huge spectrum of what Ma'un actually is.
There is. And the spectrum itself is instructive. On the one hand, you have these high-level interpretations. Ali ibn Abi Talib, may Allah be pleased with him, said Ma'un here refers to zakat.
The obligatory 2.5% annual charity.
Right, and that fits the heavy tone of the surah. Withholding zakat is a major sin. It destroys the economic fabric of the community.
But then you have the complete other end of the spectrum, and this is the one that really, really caught my attention. You have scholars like Ibn Masud saying Ma'un isn't money at all, it's stuff.
Mundane, everyday stuff.
A needle, a sieve, a bucket, a cooking pot.
And this is where the genius of a commentator like Ibn Kathir comes in. He provides a synthesis. He says, look, these aren't contradictory at all. They are connected by an inescapable logic.
Okay, what's the logic?
Think about the psychology of greed. If a person is so stingy, so self-absorbed, so miserly that they refuse to lend a neighbor a needle, something that costs them literally nothing to lend, something that doesn't even diminish by being used, then of course they aren't going to pay their zakat.
Right. If you can't even pass the test of the needle, you're definitely going to fail the test of the wealth tax.
Exactly. The needle is the diagnostic tool. Zakat can be abstract. You write a check, it goes away, you don't see it. But the needle, the bucket, that's right in front of your face. Your neighbor is standing right there. The cost to you is zero. If you still say no, it reveals a heart that is completely and utterly sealed by greed.
It connects right back to verse 1, doesn't it? The functional denial.
Perfectly. Why do you withhold the bucket? Because deep down you think you are the absolute owner of it. You think you are the master of the universe. You deny the fundamental reality that everything you have is on loan from God. If you truly realized that the bucket belongs to God and your neighbor is a servant of God in need, you wouldn't dare withhold it.
I want to get more specific with these items. The tradition lists some very specific things: a cooking pot, a hatchet or an axe, a bucket, and a balance or a scale. Why these specific items? Why not just money or clothes?
Think about life in a village or even a tight-knit neighborhood today. These are the absolute tools of survival and daily maintenance. A cooking pot feeds the family. If I don't have a pot, I can't cook the grain I have. My children go hungry tonight.
An axe?
An axe or a hatchet cuts wood for the fire. It fixes the roof. It's a tool of shelter and warmth.
And a bucket.
A bucket draws water from the well.
So these aren't luxuries. We're not talking about lending your neighbor your PS5 or your vintage sports car.
No. We are talking about the basic things that make life livable. If you withhold a balance or a scale, you are literally stopping someone from conducting business. You are stopping them from earning a living for their family. You are actively hindering their survival.
There is a very specific category mentioned in the traditions that I found really powerful: water, fire, and salt.
The basics of existence. The Prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned these three things specifically as things that should never be withheld from a neighbor.
Let's talk about the water, because in a modern city, water comes out of a tap. We don't think about it. But in the context of that revelation,
In a desert environment, water is life, period. There is no ambiguity. If a traveler comes to your tent or a neighbor's well runs dry and you have water and you say, no, it's mine, you are not just being rude, you are potentially killing them.
it's a potential death sentence.
And there's a narration from Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, that is just mind-blowing on this. She says that giving water where it is plentiful is like freeing a slave, but giving water where it is scarce, that is like reviving a dead soul.
That puts a completely different spin on someone asking, can I have a glass of water?
It does. And the source argues that this applies to modern contexts, too. Think about utilities. Think about withholding assistance in a crisis. If you have a generator during a blackout and your elderly neighbor's heat is off and they're freezing and you don't run an extension cord over to them, That is withholding ma'an.
It's the refusal to be a lifeline when you have the ability.
But the definition of ma'an goes even broader than that. It's not just physical objects. The source brings up what it calls the principle of the smiling face.
Yes, the hadith of Jabir bin Abdullah. Every good deed is a charity.
And it specifically includes meeting your brother with a cheerful face.
Is a smile really ma'an?
Oh, absolutely. Think about what a smile does. It is a form of social assistance. It signals safety. It says, I acknowledge your humanity. You are welcome here. In a lonely, cold, atomized world, a genuine smile is a utility.
So withholding it is a form of emotional stinginess.
Exactly. If you walk around scowling, refusing to make eye contact, you are hoarding your humanity. You are withholding ma'in.
And that narration also mentions pouring leftover water into your brother's vessel.
I love that specific detail. The remnant. Sometimes we think, oh, I only have a little bit left. It's just the dregs. It's not worth giving. Or we think, it's embarrassing to offer this little bit.
But the tradition says, pour it out, share it.
Yes. Even the remnant has value. Don't waste it. Share the utility. It teaches us that no act of kindness is ever too small to count in the eyes of God.
Now, I want to pivot to the legal side of things. I know legal sounds dry, but this is actually really practical for everyday life. The source talks about a concept in Islamic law called araya.
The gratuitous loan.
This sounds like something I'd sign at a car dealership. But in Islamic law, or fiqh, it's all about neighborliness. Could you explain araya for us?
So aria is the specific legal term for lending a non-fungible object to someone for their benefit, for free.
And non-fungible just means it doesn't get used up.
Right, an apple is fungible. If I lend you an apple, you eat it. It's gone. You can't return that specific apple. You owe me a new apple. That's a debt. But a hammer, a dress, a lawnmower, you use it and you return that specific item, that's aria.
So no money changes hands.
Yeah.
It's purely to help the borrower.
Purely for their benefit.
But here is the question that I know everyone listening is asking right now. I have a neighbor. Let's call him Bob. And Bob is, well, Bob is clumsy. Bob breaks things.
Yeah.
If I lend Bob my expensive lawnmower, there's a very good chance it comes back with a weird rattle or a bent blade. Does the Quran say I just have to be a doormat? Am I obligated to lend my expensive tools to Bob the destroyer?
This is where the law brings in the necessary guardrails. The deep dive source does a great job of distinguishing between the moral ideal and the legal liability.
Okay, break that down. Who pays if Bob breaks the mower?
Generally, in Islamic law, if the item breaks due to clear negligence, Bob ran over a giant rock he should have seen, or used the mower to try and trim a hedge or something ridiculous, then Bob is liable. He has to pay for the repairs.
Okay, that's fair.
But, and this is a big but, if it breaks during normal use, the engine just sputters and dies of old age while he's mowing his perfectly flat lawn, then the borrower isn't liable. It's considered your loss.
So there is a risk involved for the lender.
There is always a risk in providing ma'an, and absorbing that risk, that wear and tear, is part of the charity. You are absorbing a small cost to help your brother.
But do I have to lend it? Is it an actual sin to say no to Bob?
Most scholars would say that aria is mustahab. It's highly recommended. It's a sign of excellent character, but it's not legally mandatory in every single case. You are allowed to protect your property.
However, there's a however coming. I can feel it.
However, in the context of Surah Al-Ma'un, it can absolutely become an obligation depending on the level of need.
The distress factor.
Right. If Bob just wants to mow his lawn to make it look nice for a party and you say no, you're maybe being a bit unneighborly, but it's not a major sin. But if Bob's main water pipe has burst and his basement is flooding and he needs your wrench right now to stop the water...
And I say, no, sorry, go buy your own wrench.
That refusal is what the jurists call mean behavior morally. It approaches the level of sin because you are allowing significant harm to occur when you could prevent it with zero effort and zero cost. You are valuing your tool over your neighbor's entire well-being.
That makes perfect sense. The obligation scales with the urgency of the need.
Exactly.
And this connects so deeply to the ethical dimension that the great scholar Al-Ghazali talks about. He discusses khuluq, or character.
Al-Ghazali takes us from the court of law to the much more important court of the heart. He says that character isn't what you do once in a while. It's a firmly entrenched form in the soul.
So it's about habituation.
Yeah.
It's what you do on autopilot.
Yes. Think about it. A truly generous person doesn't have to agonize over lending the wrench in that emergency. They don't stand there weighing the pros and cons or checking their insurance policy. They see the need, and their hand just moves before their brain even has time to debate it.
It's automatic. It's second nature.
That is true, Kuluk. The denier described in the Surah has the opposite character. Their soul is sealed by stinginess. Their knee-jerk reaction is always, no, mine, go away. They have to force themselves to be kind if they manage to do it at all.
So Surah Al-Ma'un is acting as a kind of a defibrillator for the heart.
That's the metaphor the source uses. The surah is trying to shock the heart back to life. It's shouting, wake up, look at yourself. If you can't even lend a bucket, your faith is flatlining. It's a chance to resensitize yourself to the needs of others before that seal on your heart becomes permanent.
This brings us right to the present day. We've talked about Mecca, Medina, desert wells, clumsy neighbors, but how do we apply this right now? The source introduces a concept I really love called the micro-yes.
I think this is a brilliant application for the 21st century. We are so often overwhelmed by the state of the world. We see wars, famine, systemic poverty on the news every night. We feel helpless. We think, well, I can't solve world hunger, so I'll just close the blinds and watch Netflix.
Paralysis by analysis,
Mhm.
or just sheer compassion fatigue.
Exactly. The micro-yes is a way to break that paralysis, it says. Forget saving the entire world for a second. Can you just say yes to the small, inconvenient request that is right in front of your face?
Give me some examples. What is a micro-yes in the modern office?
Okay, you're at your desk, you're in the zone, you're busy. A colleague walks up and asks, hey, do you have an iPhone charger I could borrow? Your first instinct might be, ugh, I'm using it, or they'll probably steal it. The micro-yes is overcoming that initial friction and just saying, sure, here you go.
Or someone asking for help with a spreadsheet.
Can you just show me how to do this VLOOK up one more time? You could easily say, just Google it. But the micro-yes is staying 5 minutes late to walk them through it. It's that small sacrifice of your time and convenience.
What about in the neighborhood? We talked about sugar and drills,
Yeah.
but honestly, I feel like people are afraid to even ask these days. We just order everything on Amazon Prime.
That's so true. We've sort of monetized our independence, which means we need each other less. But that actually makes the requests we do get even more important. If a neighbor's car battery is dead and they ask for a jump start,
That's a classic Mon moment.
it is a pure Mon moment. You have the cables, it takes 10 minutes, but it completely disrupts your morning schedule. Do you say yes, or do you pretend you aren't home?
And there's a digital dimension to this too. Digital Mon.
This is huge because we live so much of our lives online. What is Mon there? It's sharing helpful information. If you see a job posting and you know someone who has been out of work, send it to them. Don't just scroll past, don't hoard the information.
Or just offering basic kindness.
Yes. We scroll past so much pain online, people posting about their grief, their struggles, their loneliness. A micro-yes is stopping for 30 seconds to leave a real comment. Not a generic emoji, but a real word of encouragement. I see you. I'm praying for you. This sounds so hard.
It's actively pushing back against the internal bitterness.
It combats that internal bitterness that can grow with age and isolation and disappointment. Every time you say yes to a small request, you are chipping away at that calcification on your heart. You are actively training yourself to be a giver.
And the source argues that doing this, on a mass scale, builds social cohesion.
Think about the fabric of a society. What is a community? It's not just a collection of houses next to each other. It's a web of mutual reliance. If I feel like I can't ask you for a cup of salt, and you feel like you can't ask me for a ladder, then we aren't really neighbors. We're just strangers living in close proximity.
The source calls it a trust indicator.
Exactly. A healthy community is one where you feel comfortable knocking on a door and asking for help. If you feel shame or fear just for asking for a basic need, that's a sign the community is sick. The Mon has been withheld so much that people have stopped asking.
There is a specific danger mentioned here that I really want to highlight. The lie.
The convenient lie.
Yeah. Your neighbor asks for the drill. You have the drill, it's sitting right there on the shelf in your garage. But you just don't want the hassle. So you say, oh, sorry, I think I lent it to my brother, or, I just can't seem to find it.
That is incredibly dangerous territory because now you aren't just being stingy, which is the trait of the denier in the first half of the surah. You are now also being dishonest, which is the trait of the hypocrite in the second half. You are combining the worst traits of the entire surah. You are layering darkness upon darkness.
It's better to just honestly say, I'm not comfortable lending it out, than to lie about it.
Much, much better. At least that is honest. The lie seals the heart in a way that just being stingy doesn't.
We have to teach this to the next generation. I have kids, and I want them to have this generous spirit. The source has some really practical pedagogical reflections for youth.
It's so crucial. Kids are naturally possessive. Mine is one of the first words they learn. We have to actively train that mon muscle in them from a young age.
The gratitude jar is one idea mentioned.
And usually gratitude jars are for, what did I get today? I'm thankful for my new toy. But this idea is to flip it. Make it a mullen jar. How did I help today?
I shared my crayons with Sarah. I helped my little sister tie her shoe.
Exactly. And the kindness tree. You put a drawing of a bear tree on the wall. Every time they share or help without being asked, they get to put a leaf on the tree. It validates that these small things matter. It shows them that God cares about the shared crayon just as much as he cares about the prayer.
But the most powerful one, and honestly the scariest one for us as parents, is parental modeling.
Kids are the ultimate surveillance state. They are always, always watching.
They really are.
If they see dad holding the door open for a stranger, or mom smiling at the tired cashier even when she's in a rush, they learn that this is what faith looks like in the real world. But if they hear their parents gossiping or ignoring the neighbor in need or telling that lie about the drill, they learn that faith is just a show. They learn Rhea.
It all comes back to that initial diagnostic test. This surah really forces you to look in the mirror.
It does. It strips away all the complex theology, it takes away the fancy titles and the religious garb, and it leaves you with a simple, naked question. Is your heart open, or is it closed?
So let's try and summarize our journey today. This has been quite a ride through just 7 short verses.
We started with that diagnostic test. We realized that Surah Al-Ma'un is a stark warning that rejecting simple assistance, the small stuff, can completely negate years of ritual prayer.
We saw the structure of the surah itself as a bridge from Meccan belief to Medinan action. You can't have one without the other.
We analyzed the diagnosis. The denial of the afterlife isn't just an intellectual position, it's the cruelty of pushing away the orphan and the cold indifference to the poor.
We looked at the trap of empty ritual, that shocking woe to those who pray but are heedless of their prayer, the modern-day danger of Rhea showing off for the algorithm.
And finally, we landed on Ma'un, the bucket, the needle, the water, the smile, the divine command to be useful, to realize that we are trustees of God's bounty, not its ultimate owners.
It really teaches us that faith is a verb. It's not just something you hold in your heart. It's something you extend with your hand.
Beautifully put.
I want to leave our listeners with one final provocative thought. Something to chew on as they go about their week.
Go for it.
We talked about that test, the garage test. The true test of your belief isn't just in the mosque or on the prayer mat. It might just be in your garage or your kitchen or your office cubicle. It's waiting for that moment when a neighbor or a colleague or a complete stranger asks for a micro yes.
The moment of inconvenience.
Exactly. When that knock comes on the door, when that request pops up in your inbox, will you see it as an annoyance? Will you see it as a drain on your precious resources? Or will you see it as a divine appointment, a chance to prove to yourself and to God that you actually believe in the recompense? Will you be ready to pass the test of Ma'un?
That is the question we all need to answer. May Allah make us of those who give easily and with an open heart.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you with goodness for spending your valuable time listening to us.
Wa iyyakum. Until next time.